Okay, it's 6:02. I'd like to call this meeting to order.
Thank you.
Open with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Roll call, please.
Trustee Downing.
Here.
Trustee Sprague.
Here.
Kushner.
Yep. Here.
Trustee Rogers.
Yes, here.
Patton.
Here.
And O'Malley.
Here.
And the mayor's here.
Calm down, man.
Come on over, Ann.
Yeah.
I tell you, I offered to sit somewhere else if you guys are worried about getting whatever I have. All right,
Cambridge.
Yeah.
phone it in.
I went Berlin. You went
I feel like I
Cambridge.
could phone it in today. Let me tell you.
It's either end.
Yeah, 6 feet away.
Okay. As we started to look into the possibilities of getting a bond for the fact that FEMA has not declared our situation emergency. What's that?
You want Denise for this meeting?
What do you need more copies of?
I was short one for the board.
You can take mine and I can look on with
I'm good. You guys are all good? Yep.
Yeah.
I don't have one.
Is
That's
that
all.
what you
I just
want?
don't have one. That's all. Yeah.
here.
I can
I've got mine, so let me just go get mine.
Okay. Okay.
It's okay, Keith.
This is gonna be the best first 2 minutes of audio in a meeting ever.
Huh.
Okay, so as we start to look into pursuing a bond for the purposes of all the expenses that we had to undertake for the July flooding, and started to look into the details, there started to come into the question the possibility of taxable money versus non-taxable money, and it all falls under sort of a 60-day window. And because of this 60-day window, and Denise is going to explain this more when she comes out here, we decided that we should have this meeting now, sooner rather than waiting for the next 2 weeks for our normally scheduled meeting. So thank you guys for all being available and coming out. So as soon as Denise comes out, she will explain the process, but just as a quick point of reference, the county sent us a letter. I think we were the first to hear from the county. I want to say that was, I can't remember exactly when that was that we received the letter notifying that FEMA had decided not to declare the July storms that hit the disaster threshold for I think 13 or 12 counties across the state. They decided that they would not declare that a disaster. So the normal funding that we would get in a situation like that, which I think is 75% from FEMA and another 12.5% from the state, that tends to be how those emergencies work. It's not available to us. I want to say that the expenses for the flood were somewhere around the $350,000 to $400,000 mark when all is said and done, and Denise can give us the exacts on that. The state is appealing this. I have not heard anything new from the state about the appeal process or the timeline or how long it will take, but we know that because cash flow is kind of tight anyway to begin with, we need to act now to try to get a bond, and this is the kind of debt that can be pursued on a 10 or 15-year bond payback period. So I think I've given everybody the general summary of this, but if you could get us into the details, Denise, that would be fantastic.
Question regarding getting a bond. What about the $2 million restoration money that the governor announced that cannot be used for any of this?
Which $2 million did? Which $2
For
million
acquiring,
is this?
demolishing the private properties.
Oh, I'm
That's
sorry.
different,
I'm sorry. Yeah, there's a $1 million program for the buyout program for obtaining properties. There was a $900 and something thousand grant, and that's the one that we went for with the town and B&L Barton and LaJudas to pursue that solutions up higher on the hills, up before the water comes to the village. And there were two separate SAM grants that came from then and some of the McLaughlin's office that were $100,000 each. None of those would apply to this situation, unfortunately. Sorry, I'm still a little not with it today. What's that?
They were basically
Those are all
designated
designated for
to do
specific
this
purposes.
with
Yep.
a conditional
Yep.
explanation.
All right. Denise, please get us into the weeds here so we can understand the details.
So to date, from July, from the flood, we have incurred and paid all but about $90,000. We've spent $366,000 to date, which are all items that are not in our budget.
Right.
So seriously, puts a dent in the cash flow.
Denise, you said 90,000 we've paid. You said
Or
No.
we still
We have-
owe.
we still owe.
Right.
Okay, unpaid.
So we paid 360. We owe
Of
another
bills
90.
that we currently have in hand.
Okay.
With that said, because we're gonna do this financing, Neil has approximated about $30,000 to finish the sidewalks and curbing up at Abbott, on Abbott and Classic. That would be everything included, labor, forms, cement, sand, gravel, and also, because there was allowance under the finance law, local finance law, they had to remove so many trees in the park, and also at the Bolsons, I believe. He wants to put in, replace about 8 maple trees. That, that's not part of that 90,000. That's over and above come spring, things that just needed to be, they need to be done to finish what needs to be done.
Removal
Put it
or
back
buy
to
then? Removal or buy?
Replace.
fine.
Nice, yeah.
He called Suttonscapes and they had given him a quote. So that puts us at, let's see what our grand total is, $393,000. So under certain categories, depending on what the work is, we have a whole listing of all the expenses that have been paid. One of the issues that I'm not happy with, which our hands are tied once again by the federal government. I mean, this flood happened in July. We really expected to get some money from FEMA. I can't even remember another disaster when we haven't gotten money from FEMA.
Well, even the March snowstorms from last year, that was declared an emergency, and we got the money for that.
But and it was after what? It was in when we get that like September. It wasn't like six.
There's always
Yeah.
kind of a
There's always a
lag
delay,
time.
right?
Yeah.
At least if you know it's coming. But with the other hits we've taken cash flow wise, we don't have that
Cushion.
ability to skate through. So we've incurred and paid expenses starting back in July. And I'm not a guru on the federal tax laws or however it works for government borrowing, but there's normally bond resolutions are done at the beginning of a project, like our sewer project. You plan on doing it, you do a bond resolution because you know you're going to borrow the money. So the federal government, if you don't do an intent to finance within 60 days of the day that you start borrowing money, all the money you borrow up to that date is considered taxable. Just a different interest rate is all it boils down to, which kind of stinks. And I'm pushing with the bond council, giving him minutes, the FEMA application, trying to say, look, we had a flood. We didn't have the time to say to these people while water was flowing through their house, oh, we have to advertise for a bond resolution. I mean, I understand law is law, but let's use some common sense, it's like you'd think that there'd be a look-through window, but. So when you look at this spreadsheet, you're gonna see tax and non-tax and taxable, that's all that means are the expenses, which is why it was important to have this meeting tonight. This meeting with the intent to borrow will stop the 60-day look-back window. So everything from today, back 60 days will be considered non-taxable as well as anything we incur in the future. So pretty much our expenses from July to November are gonna be considered taxable unless we can find a loophole and get most of it covered as non-taxable. Still all able to be borrowed or financed. Neil and I sat down. There's a probable usefulness in local finance law, like CHIPS. When you do road work, it has to have a 10-year probable usefulness in order to apply for CHIPS funding. Same thing with all this stuff. Neil and I had to categorize under, depending on what the expense was, if it was a waterway improvement and drainage project, a highway, road, street, parkway project. There were curb, sidewalks, and gutters, machinery and apparatus. He had the dump truck smashed, which we did recoup some insurance money for, but the net of that didn't fall under that. So there are some extras of these, but the tree rehab program, for instance, is about $9,500. That's a 5-year borrowing. because of the probable use when I saw that. The machinery is also 5 years. The curb, sidewalks, and gutters are 10-year borrowing, and the water improvements and the highway improvements are 15 years. So we're gonna have 3 resolutions tonight. What was that?
There's three resolutions, bonds come from 5 different buckets, correct?
It's gonna be 3.
3, so it's
Yeah.
just 3, okay.
Yeah, 3. First of all, the resolution for intent to finance needs to be done first. Which kind of covers the whole entire project as a whole.
Declaration of official intent.
So I don't know,
Right, that was the first in the packet, right? The
Yeah.
first on top of the
There
list.
was-
I have
yeah.
this in there.
and that's where on the second page, it gives an amount not to exceed 400,000. And because we make these resolutions tonight also, I mean, if it states that it's not gonna exceed 370, that doesn't mean that, we're gonna be at 370, we may actually be at 350. We built in a 10%, the bond council added 10% to the cost that we have on our spreadsheet. So it very well might not come to the amount, it'll be, under, possibly by 10%. But that'll all come to the board anyway when we actually do the financing for the actual notes themselves. So the breakdown, you all see the other 3 bond resolutions? One in the top paragraph makes reference to 370,000. The other is 40,000.
And
That's these
18.5.
3 here, yep.
Right.
Third is 18.5. Yeah. So
It's not an alarm sound I'm used to hearing. I don't know what that one means.
Oh,
Yep.
So if
This
you
is
were
the
to
first one.
total all of
Very
those,
nice.
they're gonna pretty much tie into where I gave you the categories that Neil and I broke out, the local finance. On the last page, it's got the total of about $393,000.
$93, 3,000.
And all of these bonds are just for the resolution. One is for 5 years, one is for the 10, and one is for 50.
Do we know which one's which is 5 years? Denise?
Yeah.
The 18.5.
that's
Yes.
the tree one, right?
The lowest one's 5 years.
5, yes. And then the 40,000 is 10-year.
Mm-hmm.
And luckily, the 300 and 370
Is
is
15.
15 year.
And do we know the interest rates on all those or no? Not yet.
I mean, some of the more recent ones we've been financing at like 2.5 to 4. So I don't know. But the principal payments alone, are going to be 33,000 at least for the first year. Even just spreading all the terms out, which isn't as bad as. Luckily, we can spread it out that long. And with that said, if we get FEMA money, it'll be paid off. He knows to put a callable section in the notes so that if we do FEMA aid, we can just turn around and pay it without penalty. Which we're hoping if there's enough pressure on me, it'll come through with at least some money. So I don't know, Rob, if you wanna, really the first paragraph, or you can.
Yeah, within the. I'm not going to read all 3 pages of each one. That would be forever. But just as I'm looking over the numbers, it looks like with all the 15-year bills, they come out to under 370. But this gives us extra money for administrative costs.
10%.
Okay. All right. That's it across the board. Okay. All right. In that case, I will read the full first resolution out first. Resolution constituting declaration of official intent to finance capital expenditures required as a result of July 2017 flooding. Whereas the village of Hoosick Falls in early July 2017 suffered significant flash flood damage to public improvements, including without limitations, roadways, storm drains, the public water distribution system, and the sanitary sewer collection system, called Storm Damage Huron. And whereas the storm damage required immediate action by the village to restore critical municipal services and repair or replace damaged municipal improvements, and the incursion of costs to undertake such restoration, repair, and replacement, collectively the storm-related costs. And whereas the village board has authorized payment and the village has paid a portion of such storm-related costs and the remainder remains unpaid. And whereas the village is seeking assistance from the United States Federal Emergencies Management Agency, FEMA, for the storm-related costs, and whereas if the village does not receive such assistance from FEMA, or such assistance does not cover a material portion of the storm-related costs, the village may need to finance the storm-related costs through the insurance of village debt obligations under state law. And whereas in connection with the issuance of federally tax-exempt municipal debt obligations to reimburse a municipality for expenditures for capital improvement costs previously incurred, federal tax regulations require the borrowing municipality to evidence its official intent to finance not later than 60 days after payment of the original expenditures. And whereas the village board reasonably expects that all or some portion of the storm-related costs already paid for will be reimbursed with proceedings of village debt obligations if other resources, including possible FEMA funding, are not made available. Now therefore be it resolved by the board as follows. Section 1, the statements contained in this resolution with respect to the reimbursement of the storm-related costs are intended to be statements of official intent as required by and conformance with provisions of Treasury Regulation Section 1.150-2E. Section 2, the storm-related costs expected to be reimbursed pursuant to this resolution A have been incurred not more than 60 days prior to the date hereof, or will be incurred after the date hereof. B, constitute preliminary expenditures as described in Treasury Regulation Section 1.150-2F2, or C, fall within the de minimis exception described within Treasury Regulation Section 1.150-2F1. Section 3, the village board reasonably expects to reimburse the village funds from which storm-related costs have been paid from proceeds of village borrowing contemplated by this resolution. Section 4 of this resolution is intended to be a declaration of the village's official intent to apply proceeds of the borrowing contemplated hereby to the reimbursement of expenditures for storm-related costs. Section 5, the maximum principal amount expected to be borrowed to finance the storm-related costs, including amounts to be used to reimburse expenditures of storm-related costs, is $400,000. And 6, this resolution shall take effect immediately. So I'm looking for a motion to vote. Yeah.
Second.
All right. Who initially?
Oh, I'm sorry. You said
And-
motion. I thought it was Ian. I thought it was Karen.
Motion
I thought
Karen.
it was Karen's second.
Second, Bobby. Any further discussion on this? Roll call vote, please.
Karen? Yes. Brian?
Yes. Good timing.
Yes.
Yes.
And Ben?
Yes.
You can put me down for a yes too. Okay. I'm not going to read all of the next one.
Just read the top. Can you just read the top?
Yeah, just the top
part?
cover. And do you want me to start with the 5-year or the 10-year one? I'll start with I'll start with the 40,000. No, I'll start with the 5-year one, which is the 18,500. Okay. Resolution authorizing acquisition of construction and maintenance apparatus and tree acquisition and certain tree-related work for and in the village of Hoosick Falls, Rensselaer County, New York. Authorizing the issuance of serial bond of said village in an aggregate principal amount not to exceed $18,500 pursuant to the local finance law to finance said purpose, and delegating the power to issue bond anticipation notes in anticipation of the sale of such bonds to the village treasurer. Yeah, I'm not going to read the next 3 pages.
I'll make a motion.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you, Bobby. And Brian was second. I don't think I need to read any more on this. This is, again, the 5-year one. Any further discussion or any discussion? Okay.
Karen?
We'll call you up.
Brian?
Yep.
Bob Ryan?
Yes.
Kevin?
Yes.
Bob Downing?
Yes.
And Ben?
Yes.
Myself as well, yes. Passes. Next one, this is the $40,000 one. This is the 10-year one. A resolution authorizing repair and improvements of curbs, sidewalks, and gutters in the village of Hoosick Falls, Rensselaer County, New York. Authorizing the issuance of serial bonds of said village in an aggregate principal amount not to exceed $40,000 pursuant to the local finance law to finance said purpose, and delegating the power to issue bond anticipation notes in anticipation of the sale of such bonds to the village treasurer. Looking for a motion.
Motion.
Ben?
Second.
Second, Brian. Thank you, guys.
Karen? Yes. Brian?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Kevin?
Yes.
Is that a yes?
Yes.
Yeah.
He said yes. He said yes a bunch of times.
I said it before. You're enthusiastic about this one.
Yeah,
Yes.
really.
I just gotta say one
And
thing.
yes to me as well.
And on these resolutions, my name is not on there.
We know that.
Okay.
Take a hit, Bobby.
We're gonna put you on.
You're
I don't have
on
to
it.
be here, that's fine.
All right, that also passed.
You're all right, Bob.
And the final one, the 15-year one for $370,000. A resolution authorizing waterway and highway repairs and improvements in the village of Hoosick Falls, Rensselaer County, New York, authorizing the issuance of serial bonds of said village in an aggregate principal amount not to exceed $370,000, pursuant to the local finance law to finance said purposes, and delegating the power to issue bond anticipation notes in anticipation of the sale of such bonds to the village treasurer. I'm looking for a motion.
Motion.
I'll give that one to Karen.
Second.
Second. Thank you, Bobby. Any
Bob,
discussion? All right.
I didn't
Yes.
say anything.
Okay, take care.
He's,
Yes. Karen and Bob. Roll call. Karen?
Yes.
Brian Bushner.
Yes.
Bob Ryan.
Yes.
Kevin.
Yes.
Bob Downey.
Yes.
And Ben.
Yes.
okay. Yes, me as well. Sorry. Thank you.
Yeah, right.
All right. So that one passes as well.
A quick, just a little small nitpick. These say St. Mary's Park. The legal name of that park is Monument Park.
Oh.
Just as a, I don't know if that matters.
Nice, good to know though. I mean, we
Yeah, everyone calls it that, but it's legally Monument Park because it's a Civil War. The park is a Civil War memorial. It is a little bit of history. That's right.
Hence the guy.
I just saw old school.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Years.
Another piece of business I wanted to discuss an adjustment to water bill for 6 Webster Street. I have conversations with is it Mrs. Lois Pieko. Did I say that right? Yes. Basically, and I talked to Josh earlier today to get straight answers. So I'm basically just going to read to you what Josh told to me and cleared.
Mayor, is this the woman who was here with the bottle?
This was with the water, yeah. I had told her to come to a board meeting, and she
Yes.
thought that meant to wait until the very end to explain the situation, which she didn't realize that we were going to executive session, so that was like the worst time to explain it, but I explained that to her, and
She explained it.
yeah. Okay, so you saw that.
Yeah. Yeah.
The basic gist is there was a sewer line issue at the intersection of Webster and Abbott. They had to do some sort of fix at the intersection. It was broken at the top and it got sand and dirt in there. This is all before the regular spring and fall hydrant flushing. And way back with the PFOA situation, DEC didn't initially allow flushing during the PFOA crisis for a while, so a lot of sediment likely settled there. When the 2 hydrants were flushed to pull debris out of that water line, it disturbed the area, stirred up sediment and debris. They'd initially run everything to try inside the house to clean out the water lines everywhere, but that just brought a lot of the dirt into everything, including the hot water heater was an issue. Josh said it made sense that they would have had to flush their hot water heater. They had been over there to help them with flushing the hose, and it was a problem that she said went on for about a month. Their request was to ask that the $88.29 from that water period be refunded back to them. Not the other parts that would be in the water and sewer bill, just the water bill. Josh estimated that between both the water usage and the sewer usage, it would probably be initially maybe $30 to $40. It could be more than that. With the problems they have with the water heater, I figured it would be a good thing to bring to you guys. So I guess I'm looking for just, thoughts on this and the discussion of refunding her $88.29. Yeah.
I mean, I'll make that motion. I think that's a reasonable request.
Yeah, I'll second that. She was very pleasant. I felt bad for her, but she really
Brought
really
in her
wanted
water
me
samples.
to keep those sample, which had settled while she was sitting here. But
Like
then
her
when she
note.
picked it up,
What's
it
that?
was
Yeah.
gross. And she really was adamant that I keep it, and I really appreciate it. But I was also kind of horrified that she was going to speak in the middle of the meeting. Go, this is my water in the middle of.
Oh,
it.
yeah,
And I was
yeah.
like, no.
No, that was her water during this
But
month
for
period.
what she's gone through, yeah, I absolutely think that's.
Any other discussion on this?
I just want to say that I think we should put in the minutes very specifically all the things with the PFA.
Yeah.
Because everybody that sees that and has their
Yep.
water tank flushed and has dirty water, it's going to be coming in.
This is unrelated to PFOA. This is all about.
But it had to do with the fact that we couldn't flush and
Right.
it's compounded problems
Right.
for her.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
So that
And that was prior to this, right? So now, I mean, prior to being able to flush. So now we can flush. We should have this issue again.
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
so
Should.
that'll clarify
Right.
if somebody else comes and with their
Yeah.
It was a very unique
because they will.
situation.
It was a unique scenario for a lot of reasons.
Yeah,
Yeah.
isolated, unique situation.
All right, so we have it.
Isolated, yes.
All right, any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Great. Motion carries. Last one, and this is something we actually messed up at our last meeting when we put a motion forward to hire the part-time officer. At last meeting, we actually never voted on it. So we went back to the recordings to check, and we, in fact, all forgot. We'll just blame the attorneys because they're not here. No, I'm just kidding. So before we do that motion, Bob, do you want to speak a little bit on your request for hiring 3 additional part-time officers beside David Amodio, who we sort of forgot to hire last time?
Unfortunately, I have to come back again and ask about hiring some additional part-timers. The issue that we're up against, and I spoke to you before, is I'm losing guys that are going to Troy, going to the Sheriff's Department. Neil Danbury is leaving. He's going to Albany County Sheriff's. Although he's going to stay part-time, his hours are being cut way down, and he's going to be short. I lost Tom Bass. He's Detroit. They won't let him come back here for 6 months based on probation. So he's got to finish up his field training there and come back.
Will Neil be in the same boat? Does he have to with Albany? He can't come back for at least 6 months.
Right, he's staying with us, but we're going to lose him.
Because he's got to be on probation period from that, right?
He's trying to get them to waive that, or at least bring the time down, so he can but based on that, right now the winter months are okay. As soon as this weather starts breaking again, I believe we're gonna get busy again. So what I wanted to do is to ask on top of the officer Emilio that you didn't put in last time, is if I can look at hiring 2 more part-timers. Please keep in mind, I know we're in some financial straits here. This is not costing us anything.
Right.
Because
it's already in the budget.
It's already in the budget. They only get paid when they work.
Right.
So there's no cost to the village. Fortunately,
No additional cost.
No additional cost.
Thank you, Bob.
Fortunately, Nick, who's with us before, he had taken a leave of absence. His time is up in Troy, where his probation, so he can come back. So I was wondering if we can put him back on. He's going to be coming to our conversations. He's going to be picking 2-3 nights a week up, which is going to be really good. He's already ready to go with the uniforms and such. And the additional person I wanted to talk about was a young man from Cambridge PD that reached out to me by the name of Ryan Buell. I left his resume application or his resume in front of me. He's a young man. He's part-time in Greenwich. He is trying to take civil service exams to become full-time. I'm not saying he's going to become full-time here, but one of his goals is to become full-time. I think he's 22, 23 years old. I've interviewed him, done background check on him. He seems like a really great officer. I think he'd be a great fit in here. He's indicated to me that he might be moving closer to the village or within the town in the next couple months. So I was hoping that since we're here tonight, we can take a look at him as well. And if the board approves, I can put both of them on immediately.
All right, so
Don't get intimidated because Nick's sitting here.
We know Nick too.
You're intimidated to stare at
That Nick guy, I don't know.
All right.
Can't have people liking our officers, you know. And they're
I mean, I don't know about discussion. I think it's inevitable. It's a necessity. There's no doubt about it. And as Bob comes here every month, we see the incident report increase, the number of incidents, number of calls. I mean, it's a no-brainer. We need the additional people, especially if we have people leaving. We have to replace them. So I have no problem as long as it's money's in the budget and we're following all the civil service rules and laws. That I'd be willing to make a motion to appoint all 3 officers, including and going back to the
we got to do him
separate motion for
Yeah.
the one from the February meeting or January meeting.
All right.
But
And just keep in mind, I do have the possibility of another officer that worked with us before, who's looking to coming back here possibly on a full-time basis with us. I'm not going to be ready for that for another couple of weeks or so.
Oh, okay, so that's not, okay, because I know you email,
Right, I've
okay.
spoken to you about them. We're waiting for some additional paperwork, and that might be within
This is Ryan's.
the next
we have.
Oh, you have one? Okay.
I was saying we can't have people liking our officers as being sarcastic, but because Nick is so well known here, just to go to the point of, we've had a lot of discussions of, we have a lot of officers that are part-time, and it'd be really great to have Nick back here, because people really like you, and they know you,
Or
and,
somebody who knows you.
yeah,
And not
Right.
hiding.
and trust you.
You're not
yeah.
hiding somewhere.
But no, I appreciate that you haven't forgotten about us, and you're willing and wanting to come back, so thank you.
Motion by Bob Ryan for Mr. David.
All right. So the first thing we need to do is we need to get a motion to appoint David Amodio, part-time officer, retroactive to January 9th,
Motion.
2018.
Okay, Brian.
Brian, Bobby gets a second. Any further discussion on this? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Carries. Now I'm looking for a motion to approve the hiring of 2 part-time officers, Nick Culinary and Ryan. Is it Buell?
Is it Buell?
Buell. Effective immediately.
So moved. Yep.
All right.
Bob goes.
All right,
I'll second.
Bob Downing and then Bobby Ryan second. Any discussion on this? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries.
Welcome back, Nick.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
Welcome back. Looking for a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Oh, wait, I'm not looking for a motion to adjourn.
No, because you and Nick, didn't say what about Ryan?
Well, we actually did.
We
it
did
this
say-
time.
We did them both at the
did
same
both.
time.
Oh, I didn't know.
We did both of them simultaneously.
No,
Yep.
no, we didn't do separate. We did them both
We got
together.
it.
Two at a time.
And then just one quick note.
Saves on paperwork.
Better be quick.
We're reviewing it for the computer for the
Yeah.
and I'm starting to receive bids in on that.
Good.
Oh, on the overhead.
The overhead as well as security
Surveillance.
cameras
Yep.
inside and outside.
And this will be more money from the.
And no money. It's
No cost.
Yeah.
No, literally no cost in the village.
Right. But it's still something we're gonna have to bring.
Right.
back.
All right. Looking for a motion.
Motion.
Second.
Second. Brian. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries.
Nick, you
Thank you
starting
guys very
tomorrow?
much.
Bobby